The diplomatic vessel shuddered violently as alarms screamed through every corridor. Taman grabbed the nearest support rail and steadied himself as the lights flickered between red emergency mode and complete darkness. He had been through rough flights before, but this felt different. This felt like dying. Engine core breach in 30 seconds. Doan's crystalline voice crackled over the intercom, high-pitched with panic. The Krillian engineer's words were followed by another massive explosion somewhere in the aft section. Taman ran toward the bridge, his boots pounding against the metal floor. Through the viewports, he could see a green and blue planet growing larger with terrifying speed. They were going down, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. On the bridge, Hywen stood rigid at the command console, her insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. The Veltharian diplomat's compound eyes reflected the chaos of failing systems around them. Beside her, Sang-hyun clutched his seat with white knuckles, his face pale with fear. "Brace for impact," Hywen's translator device barked. "All crew to crash positions." Taman threw himself into the nearest seat and pulled the harness tight across his chest. Through the viewport, he watched the planet's surface rush up to meet them. Dense jungle, mountains in the distance, a river system snaking through green wilderness. Then everything went white. The impact felt like being hit by a truck. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Taman's body jerked against the restraints hard enough to bruise. The ship bounced once, twice, then plowed through what sounded like thousands of trees before finally sliding to a grinding halt. Silence fell like a blanket. Taman's ears rang. His head throbbed. But he was alive. He fumbled with the harness release and staggered to his feet. Smoke filled the bridge and small fires flickered across damaged consoles. "Sound off," he called out, coughing. "Who's alive?" "Here," Hyun groaned from somewhere in the smoke. "I am functional." "Alive," Sang-hyun wheezed. "Bleeding, but alive," one by one voices responded. Taman did a quick count. 7 survivors out of 12 crew members. His stomach twisted, but there was no time to mourn. Not yet. He kicked open the bridge door, which had jammed halfway. Outside, the ship's main corridor was a disaster. Debris everywhere, sparks falling from exposed wiring. The hull had cracked open in several places, allowing bright sunlight and humid air to pour inside. Taman found Minji in the medical bay, already treating a Thanesian crew member named Bora. The Arquellan medic's amphibious skin looked pale and dry, which worried him. "Her species needed moisture to survive. How bad?" Taman asked. "Bora has a broken arm. Others have cuts and bruises. Nothing fatal." Minji's voice was steady despite her obvious discomfort. "But Taman, we need water, soon." He nodded and moved on, checking each survivor. Dowan had a crack running through his crystalline shoulder, but the engineer insisted he could function. The other survivors were mobile, which was something. They gathered outside the wreckage in a small clearing. The ship had carved a long scar through the jungle, leaving a trail of destruction and scattered supplies. Around them, massive trees stretched toward a bright orange sun. The air was thick and hot, filled with strange calls from unseen creatures. Hyun tried to activate her communication device, but it sparked and died. "The distress beacon is damaged. I cannot signal for help. How long until rescue?" Sang-hyun asked, his voice shaking. "Protocol requires 3 days before a search begins," Hyun said. "Perhaps a week before they find us." "A week?" Bora hissed, cradling her broken arm. "We do not have supplies for a week." Panic rippled through the group. Voices rose in argument. Dowan insisted they should climb to higher ground for better signal transmission. Minji said they needed to find water immediately. Bora wanted to salvage more from the wreck before nightfall. Sang-hyun just looked terrified. Taman stood apart, watching and listening. He scanned the jungle, noting the position of the sun, the wind direction, the sounds of running water somewhere in the distance. His mind cataloged everything automatically, a habit from years of training. "We should stay here," Hyeon declared, trying to impose order. "This is where rescue will look for us. Moving is dangerous. Staying is more dangerous," Dowan argued. "We need elevation for communications." "We need water," Minji insisted. "My species cannot survive dehydration." The argument grew louder, more chaotic. Taman noticed the sun dropping toward the horizon. Maybe 3 hours of daylight left. The temperature would fall after dark and those sounds in the jungle would grow bolder. "Does anyone here have survival training?" Hyun suddenly asked, her translator making the question sharp with frustration. Taman stepped forward. "I do." Everyone turned to look at him. He was just the human security officer, young, quiet, easy to overlook among the diplomatic staff. You? Hywan's mandibles twitched with skepticism. Taman allowed himself a small smirk. Before this job, I was a wilderness survival instructor. Before that, military special operations. I have survived in deserts, mountains, jungles, and Arctic wastelands. He met each of their eyes in turn. And if you want to live through the night, you'll listen carefully to what I say next. The authority in his voice cut through the panic. Even Huan fell silent. First, we stop arguing, Taman said calmly. Panic kills faster than anything else. Second, we work as a team. Everyone has a job. No exceptions. He pointed at the wreckage. Dao and Sangyun salvage everything useful. Food, water containers, fabric, metal pieces. Pile it here. The two moved immediately, grateful for clear direction. Minji, Bora, gather any medical supplies that survived. Then help me identify which plants around here might be useful or dangerous. He turned to Hyawan. You and I will establish a perimeter and build shelter. We have maybe 3 hours of light. That gives us enough time to prepare, but not enough time to waste. Prepare for what? Hyawan asked. Taman gestured at the jungle. Listen, they all fell quiet. In the distance, something large moved through the undergrowth. Something that made deep rumbling calls that echoed between the trees. Multiple somethings. Predators, Taman said simply. This planet has an ecosystem, which means it has hunters. They'll come investigate the crash site once darkness falls. We need fire, shelter, and defensive positions before then. Fear flickered across every face. Can we fight them? Sangyun asked weakly. We don't need to fight them. We need to make them think we're more trouble than we're worth. Taman knelt and began clearing a space for a fire pit. On Earth, humans learned to survive not because we were the strongest or fastest. We survived because we were smart. We used fire. We used tools. We worked together. He looked up at the assembled crew. You all come from worlds where survival is managed by technology. But I come from a world where my ancestors had to earn every single day they stayed alive. That knowledge is in my bones, in my instincts. Taman stood and brushed dirt from his hands. So here's the deal. You follow my instructions exactly. You trust that I know what I'm doing. And in return, I promise I will get every single one of you home alive. The group exchanged glances. Then slowly they began to nod. Good, Taman said. Now let's get to work. Darkness is coming and we have a lot to do. As the survivors scattered to their assigned tasks, Taman allowed himself one moment of doubt. He had trained for situations like this, but never with alien species. Never on an unknown planet. Still, the fundamentals remained the same: shelter, water, fire, security. He could do this. He had to do this. In the distance, the predators called again, closer this time. Taman's smirk returned. Come on then, he muttered to the jungle. Let me show you what a human can do. Taman worked fast. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he cleared the ground in a wide circle around their camp. Doan and Sangyun had salvaged a surprising amount from the wreckage. Metal panels, fabric from seats, containers of various sizes, and most importantly, several sealed emergency ration packs. Stack the metal sheets there, Taman directed, pointing to a spot near a large tree. We'll use them for the shelter frame. Sangyun, separate all fabric by size. I need the largest pieces first. While they worked, Taman gathered dry wood from the jungle edge. He chose carefully, testing each piece for dryness and density. The alien crew watched with curiosity as he arranged stones in a circle and built a careful structure of kindling and larger logs. What is that? Haiwan asked, her compound eyes studying the arrangement. Fire pit. We need fire before dark. Taman pulled out a piece of metal and a sharp stone from his pocket. Fire keeps predators away. It provides warmth, light, and can purify water. But we have no ignition tools, Dowan said, his crystalline face reflecting concern. Taman smiled. We have friction, and friction makes heat. He spent the next 10 minutes trying to create a spark with the metal and stone. Strike after strike, nothing happened. His hands started to ache. Sweat dripped down his face in the humid heat. The crew shifted nervously as the sun dropped lower. This is not working, Haiwan observed. It will work. Taman adjusted his angle and struck again. A tiny spark flew into the dried moss he had prepared. He dropped to his knees and blew gently on the ember. The moss began to smoke. There. Within seconds, small flames licked up through the kindling. Taman carefully fed the fire larger pieces until it crackled with steady heat. The alien stared in amazement. You created fire from rocks, Minji whispered, without any technology. My ancestors did this for thousands of years, Taman said, warming his hands over the flames. Long before we had machines or electricity. Fire was our first tool, our first weapon, our first protection against the night. As darkness fell across the jungle, the fire became the center of their small world. The crackling flames pushed back shadows and provided a circle of safety. Strange sounds echoed from the trees, closer now that night had arrived. Taman had positioned everyone in a defensive formation. The shelter was basic but functional, built against the large tree with metal panels forming walls and fabric stretched overhead. It would keep out rain and wind. More importantly, it created a choke point that predators would have to funnel through. Dowan, how are you holding up? Taman asked the engineer. The Krillian touched the crack in his crystalline shoulder. I am functional, but my species requires specific minerals in our water. Without them, I will deteriorate. Taman nodded. Tomorrow we find a water source. I heard a stream when we first crashed. It's maybe half a kilometer east. How do you know it is east? Sang-hyun asked. The sun sets in that direction. Taman pointed. Basic navigation. The sun rises in one direction and sets in the opposite. Once you know that, you can orient yourself anywhere. Something large moved in the darkness beyond the firelight. Everyone tensed. Yellow eyes reflected the flames circling their position. More than one set. Maybe 6 or 7 creatures, each the size of a large wolf. What do we do? Bora hissed, her reptilian features tight with fear. Nothing, Taman said calmly. We show no fear, no panic. We are the ones with fire, and fire is dangerous. They know this instinctively. The creatures crept closer. Taman could see their shapes now. 4-legged, scaled with powerful jaws. Pack hunters. Intelligent enough to coordinate their approach. One lunged toward Minji. She screamed. Taman snatched a burning branch from the fire and thrust it toward the creature. Get back! He roared, making himself as large and loud as possible. The creature yelped and retreated. Taman advanced, swinging the torch in wide arcs. The other predators backed away, snarling but unwilling to approach the flames. Make noise! Taman shouted to the crew. Bang on metal, yell. Show them we are dangerous. Doan grabbed a metal panel and struck it with a rock. The sound rang out like a gong. Sang-hyun joined in, shouting and banging. Even injured Bora hissed and rattled objects together. The combined noise was tremendous. The predators hesitated, then melted back into the jungle. Their eyes disappeared into the darkness. Are they gone? Hawan asked after a long moment of silence. For now. Taman returned the branch to the fire and picked up a fresh one, keeping it ready. They'll test us again before dawn. Predators are patient, but we proved we're not easy prey. He turned to face the exhausted crew. This is how humans survived. We weren't the biggest or the strongest, but we understood that predators calculate risk versus reward. Make yourself too dangerous, too loud, too much trouble, and they'll find easier meals elsewhere. Your species fought creatures like this? Minji asked, her eyes wide. My species fought much worse. Where I come from, we had predators that could swallow you whole, others that hunted in packs of hundreds, some that could track you for days without stopping. Taman fed more wood to the fire. But we're still here and most of them are not. Because we adapted. We learned. We refused to give up. Sang-hyun looked at Taman with newfound respect. I never knew humans were so dangerous. We're not dangerous, Taman corrected. We're survivors. There's a difference. Through the long night, they took turns keeping watch and maintaining the fire. Taman taught them how to read the jungle sounds, which noises meant danger and which were harmless, how to listen for changes in animal behavior that warned of approaching predators. Near midnight, Dowan began to shake. His crystalline body was losing its luster, turning dull and gray. Taman, Minji called urgently. Something is wrong. Taman examined the engineer. Dehydration, but worse for his species. Dowan needed minerals his body could not produce. Without them, his crystalline structure would literally begin to crumble. We need that water source now, Taman decided. Not tomorrow, now. But the predators, Hyewon protested. I'll go alone. Faster and quieter. Taman grabbed a torch and a salvaged metal rod as a weapon. Keep the fire burning. If I'm not back in an hour, assume the worst and focus on surviving until rescue. You cannot go alone, Sang-hyun said. I will come with you. Taman started to refuse, then saw the determination in the young diplomat's eyes. Sometimes courage was more valuable than experience. Stay close. Stay quiet. To exactly what I do. Taman nodded once. Let's move. They crept into the darkness, leaving the fire's safety behind. The jungle at night was alive with sounds. Insects chirped. Something howled in the distance. Leaves rustled with unseen movement. Taman moved like a ghost, each step careful and deliberate. He used the torch sparingly, only when necessary to check the path. Sang-hyun followed his example, fear making him cautious and quiet. The sound of running water grew louder. Taman led them down a slope to where a clear stream bubbled over rocks. He knelt and tested the water with his hand. Cool. Fresh. Probably safe. Fill the containers quickly, he whispered. They worked fast, filling every container they had carried. Taman was about to signal the return when he heard it. The soft pad of paws on earth. The low growl of something much larger than the pack hunters. A massive creature emerged from the trees upstream. It stood on 4 legs, each as thick as tree trunks. Its head was massive, filled with teeth designed for crushing bone. Easily 3 times the size of any predator they had seen before. Sang-hyun froze in terror. Taman slowly stood, placing himself between the creature and Sang-hyun. His mind raced through options. Running would trigger chase instinct. Fighting was suicide. That left one choice. He grabbed Sang-hyun's arm and pulled him into the stream. "Hold your breath," he hissed and pushed them both underwater. The cold water shocked his system. Taman held Sang-hyun down as the massive predator approached the bank. Through the rippling water, he could see its huge shadow passing overhead. It sniffed the air where they had been standing moments before. Taman's lungs burned. Sang-hyun struggled, running out of air. Just a few more seconds. The predator moved on, following some other scent into the jungle. They burst up gasping, coughing water. Soaked and shivering, but alive. "How did you know?" Sang-hyun wheezed. "Water hides scent. My ancestors used that trick to escape predators for generations." Taman helped him to the bank. "Come on. Dawan needs this water." They made it back to camp with no further encounters. Dawan drank gratefully, and within minutes his crystalline body began to restore its shine. "You saved my life," the engineer said simply. "We take care of each other," Taman replied. "That's the only way any of us survive this." As dawn light touched the horizon, the crew huddled around the dying fire. Exhausted but alive, they had survived their first night on this hostile world, and they had done it using methods older than civilization itself. Tamin added wood to revive the flames and smiled. They were learning, and if they kept learning, they might just make it. Morning brought new problems. The crash site offered no strategic advantage, and their water supply from the stream would run out quickly if they stayed. Worse, Taman had scouted the area at first light and found tracks. Big tracks. The massive predator from last night had circled their camp multiple times. "We need to move," Taman announced as the crew gathered around the rekindled fire. "This location is too exposed. We need higher ground, fresh water access, and better defensive positions." "How far?" Hee-won asked. Her mandibles clicked with worry. "There's a ridge system maybe 5 kilometers north. From there we can see the surrounding area and get better signal transmission for the distress beacon." Taman pointed toward distant hills. "It's a hard trek, but staying here is more dangerous." Dawan was already working on salvaging parts to repair the distress beacon. His crystalline fingers moved with impressive speed, connecting wires and testing circuits. "If I can reach elevation, I might amplify the signal enough for a rescue ship to detect us." "Then we go north," Hee-won decided, her translator giving the words a firm edge. They spent an hour preparing. Taman showed them how to make basic packs from salvaged fabric. Each person carried water, food rations, and essential supplies. He kept the group's load balanced, knowing that exhaustion would be their biggest enemy, besides predators. "Stay in formation," Taman instructed as they prepared to leave. "I take point. Sang-hyun, you're right behind me. Minji and Bora in the center. Dawan and Hee-won at the rear. Nobody wanders off. Nobody falls behind." "Why this order?" Bora asked, adjusting the sling on her broken arm. "Strongest at front and back. Most vulnerable in the middle where we can protect them." Taman checked each person's pack. "This is how humans moved through dangerous territory for thousands of years. Trust the system." They set out as the sun climbed higher. The jungle was beautiful in daylight, but beauty meant nothing to survival. Every step required attention. Roots that could trip you, insects that could bite or sting, plants that might be poisonous to different species. Taman moved carefully, reading the environment like a book. He pointed out broken branches that indicated animal trails. Scat that told him what predators were in the area and how recently they had passed. Scratches on trees that marked territory boundaries. How do you know all this? Sangyun asked, watching in amazement. Pattern recognition. Every animal leaves signs. You just need to know what to look for. Taman crouched to examine a depression in the soil. 3-toed print. Maybe 2 hours old. Large herbivore, probably harmless unless we threaten it. Probably. Minji's amphibious skin glistened with moisture from a water bottle she kept spraying herself with. Nothing is certain in nature, Taman said. But herbivores usually run rather than fight. It's the predators we need to watch for. They pushed through dense undergrowth for hours. The terrain grew steeper as they approached the ridgeline. Taman called regular breaks, knowing that aliens with different physiology would tire at different rates. During each rest, he taught them something new. How to identify clean water by watching where animals drank. How to tell direction by the growth pattern of moss and trees. How to estimate distance by counting paces. Small lessons that accumulated into a survival education. By midday, they reached a wide river. The water churned and frothed over rocks, moving fast and deep. It stretched maybe 30 meters across, too far to jump and too dangerous to swim. We have to cross this? Darwin's voice held doubt. The ridge is on the other side. No way around unless we add 2 days to our journey. Taman studied the river's flow and the debris caught along its banks. We build a raft. From what? Haiwan asked. From this. Taman pointed to several fallen logs near the water's edge. Those trees have fallen recently. The wood should still be buoyant. For the next 2 hours, they worked under Taman's direction. He showed them how to strip vines from trees and use them as rope. How to lash logs together in a pattern that would support weight and remain stable. Doan's engineering knowledge combined with Taman's practical experience created something that looked almost professional. Will this hold all of us? Bora asked nervously. It should, but we test it first. Taman placed heavy rocks on the raft and pushed it into the shallows. It floated, stable and strong. Good, everyone aboard. Keep your weight centered and hold on tight. They climbed onto the raft carefully. Taman used a long pole to push them away from the shore. The current caught them immediately, pulling them downstream faster than he expected. Paddle left, Taman shouted. Use your hands, anything. We need to angle across. Everyone paddled desperately. The raft spun sideways as the current strengthened. Rocks loomed ahead, white water crashing over them with violent force. Taman jammed his pole against a boulder and pushed hard. The raft lurched away from the rocks, but the vine lashings groaned under the strain. One vine snapped with a sound like a gunshot. It's breaking apart. Minji cried, "Hold on!" Taman struggled to keep the raft together, but another vine snapped. The logs began to separate. Bora, still weak from her injury, lost her grip. She tumbled backward into the churning water with a scream. Bora! Sangyun reached for her, but she was already gone, swept downstream by the current. Taman didn't hesitate. He dove into the river without thinking, his body cutting into the cold water like a knife. The current grabbed him and pulled him under. He fought to the surface, gasping, and spotted Bora's reptilian head disappearing beneath the waves. He swam hard, using the current's momentum to cover distance quickly. His training took over. Strong strokes, controlled breathing, eyes locked on his target. Bora surfaced again, thrashing in panic. Taman reached her and grabbed her good arm. "Stop fighting. I have you." But Bora's panic made her strong. She clawed at him, pushing him underwater in her desperation. Taman's lungs burned as he fought to calm her while keeping them both afloat. Then he saw it. A dark shape moving through the water toward them. Fast. Predatory. The river had hunters just like the jungle did. The creature surged up from below, all teeth and scales. Easily 2 meters long with jaws that could snap bone. Taman had only seconds to react. He pulled the metal rod from his belt, the one he had kept as a weapon. As the predator lunged, Taman jammed the rod into its open mouth and twisted hard. The creature thrashed, trying to bite down, but the rod blocked its jaws. Taman kicked hard, driving his boot into the predator's eye. Once, twice. The creature released the rod and fled into the murky depths. Swim! Taman grabbed Bora and pulled her toward the opposite shore. His muscles screamed with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. Not while she was still alive. They reached shallow water and collapsed on the muddy bank. Taman coughed up river water, his entire body shaking. Bora lay beside him, breathing hard but alive. The rest of the crew reached shore moments later, having guided the failing raft to a landing spot downstream. They ran to where Taman and Bora lay. "You fought that thing," Dowan said, his crystalline voice filled with awe. "In the water. With your bare hands, not bare hands. Had a rod." Taman sat up slowly, checking Bora for injuries. "And I had motivation. Couldn't let her die. No creature on my world would do what you just did," Hyewon said quietly. "You dove into dangerous water. You fought a predator in its own element. You saved her life without thought for your own. That's what humans do." Taman helped Bora to her feet. "We protect our tribe, our pack, our crew. It's instinct." Sangyun stared at Taman like he was seeing him for the first time. "We are very lucky you are human." "No," Taman corrected, wringing water from his clothes. "You're lucky I'm from Earth. My planet made me this way. The oceans, the predators, the constant challenge of survival. Earth doesn't forgive weakness, so humans learn to be strong." They rested for an hour, drying out and recovering from the crossing. Taman built a small fire to warm them and checked everyone for injuries. Bora had swallowed some water but would recover. The others were exhausted but functional. As they prepared to continue the trek toward the ridge, Dowan approached Taman. "I have been thinking," the engineer said carefully. "You said humans are not the strongest or fastest species, but I have watched you these past days. You have endurance my species cannot match. You have courage that defies logic. You adapt to situations faster than our most advanced computers." "Where are you going with this?" Taman asked. "I think humans are stronger than they believe themselves to be," Dowan said. "Not in body, but in spirit, in will. Your species survived a hostile world not because you had to, but because you refused to do anything else." Taman considered this. "Maybe you're right. We're stubborn like that." They continued north as the sun began its descent. The ridge loomed closer with each hour. Taman pushed them hard but not beyond their limits. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and they needed to conserve energy. That night they made camp on a hillside with good visibility in all directions. Taman taught them to build a proper fire pit with stones that would reflect heat. He showed them which plants could be eaten and which would make them sick. As they sat around the fire eating rations, Minji asked the question they all wondered. "What kind of world produces humans like you?" They reached the ridge by noon the next day. The climb had been brutal, especially for Minji, whose amphibious legs were not built for steep terrain. But Taman had moved slowly, helping each crew member navigate the difficult path. When they finally crested the ridge, the view took their breath away. Below them stretched endless jungle in every direction. They could see the river they had crossed, winding like a silver snake through green wilderness. In the distance, mountains rose into clouds. The crash site was barely visible, a tiny scar in the vast landscape. "This is perfect," Dowan said, already unpacking the distress beacon components. "From this elevation, I can boost the signal significantly." While the engineer worked, Taman explored the ridgeline. He found a series of caves carved into the rock face, protected from wind and rain. Large enough to shelter them all. Dry inside. "Perfect defensive positions we set up here," Taman announced. "These caves will be our base until rescue arrives." But something bothered him. The air felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. He had felt this before, back on Earth before major storms. His instincts screamed warning. Taman studied the horizon. Dark clouds gathered in the west, massive and angry. They moved fast, eating up the sky with unnatural speed. "How long until the beacon is ready?" he asked Dowan. "Another hour, perhaps 2. "Why?" "Because we have maybe 3 hours before that storm system hits us." Taman pointed at the approaching darkness. "And it looks bad." Hyewon followed his gaze. "How can you tell?" "The cloud structure. The color. The way the wind is shifting." Taman had already started gathering loose rocks. "On Earth, I tracked storms across oceans and mountains. This one is going to be violent. We need to prepare now." The crew moved with urgent efficiency. Taman directed them like a conductor leading an orchestra. Sangyun and Bora collected every piece of dry wood they could find and stored it deep in the caves. Minji gathered medicinal plants and herbs, working from descriptions Taman provided. Hyewon helped him build a stone wall across the cave entrance to protect against wind and rain. Dowan worked frantically on the beacon, his crystalline fingers flying across circuits and wiring. "Almost finished. Just need to calibrate the frequency." The wind picked up. The temperature dropped noticeably. Those dark clouds now covered half the sky, and lightning flickered in their depths like trapped electricity seeking release. "Everyone inside," Taman shouted as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Down now! 1 more minute! Thunder rolled across the ridge like the voice of an angry god. Rain fell harder, turning from drops to sheets in seconds. Dowan hunched over the beacon, trying to shield it with his body as he made final adjustments. Got it. The beacon flared to life, sending out a powerful distress signal into the storm. Dowan grabbed the device and ran for the caves. The storm hit with the force of a freight train. Wind screamed across the ridge, strong enough to knock a person off their feet. Rain fell so hard it was difficult to breathe. Lightning struck nearby, close enough that they felt the electricity in the air. Thunder shook the ground beneath them. Taman had positioned everyone deep in the largest cave. The fire he had built earlier provided light and warmth. The stone wall they constructed blocked most of the wind and rain. But the storm's fury was beyond anything the crew had experienced. How long will this last? Bora shouted over the noise. No way to know, Taman admitted. Hours, maybe days. A massive lightning bolt struck the ridge above them. Rock exploded from the impact. Debris rained down. A boulder the size of a vehicle broke loose and rolled toward the cave entrance. Get back! Taman pushed Minji and Sanghyun deeper into the cave as the boulder crashed into their stone wall. The wall held, but cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. Water began to pour into the cave from multiple sources. The ridge was flooding. Within minutes, they were ankle-deep in cold water. We need to move higher in the cave system, Hayawan said. They retreated deeper, following passages that led up into the rock. Taman led the way with a torch, checking each path for stability. The storm's roar echoed through the stone, making it impossible to communicate except by shouting. They found a higher chamber, dry and protected. But as they settled in, another lightning strike hit directly above them. The ceiling cracked. Small stones fell, then larger ones. It's collapsing. Dowan screamed. A section of ceiling gave way. Rock poured down like an avalanche. Taman saw it happening in slow motion. Minji and Sanghyun were directly in the path. He lunged forward and shoved them aside, but wasn't fast enough to escape himself. The rocks buried him up to his chest. Pain exploded through his ribs. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Taman! Sanghyun dug at the rocks with his bare hands. The others joined him, pulling away stones one by one. It took 10 minutes to free him. Taman gasped for air, pain shooting through his torso with every breath. Broken ribs, definitely. Maybe internal injuries, too. I am fine, he lied, seeing the panic on their faces. Help the others. But more rock had fallen behind them. 2 crew members, aliens he had barely gotten to know during the journey, were trapped on the other side of the collapse. He could hear their muffled screams through the stone. We have to dig them out, Bora said. Taman tried to stand and nearly passed out from pain. His hands were bleeding from the rocks. His vision swam, but he forced himself to focus. Dowan, Sanghyun, start moving rocks from the top. Work carefully or you'll cause another collapse. Hyun, Minji, check if there's another way around. They worked through the night while the storm raged outside. Taman directed them even as his strength faded. Every breath was agony. His hands were shredded. But he kept going because that's what humans did. They refused to quit. Hours passed. The pile of rocks seemed endless. Taman's hands were so damaged he couldn't grip anymore. Blood ran down his arms. But still he dug, using his forearms when his hands failed. Taman, you need to rest, Minji begged. Your injuries are severe. They are trapped, he said through gritted teeth. We don't leave anyone behind. Finally, near dawn, they broke through. The 2 trapped crew members were alive but injured. Taman helped pull them through the gap, ignoring his body's screams of protest. When everyone was safe, Taman finally allowed himself to collapse. Minji worked on him with medical supplies, wrapping his ribs and treating his hands. The pain was incredible, but he had felt worse. Earth had taught him to endure. The storm continued for 3 full days. Food ran low. Water was scarce despite the rain because they had no way to collect it effectively. Morale sank as exhaustion set in. The crew huddled in the cold, wet darkness, wondering if rescue would ever come. On the 3rd night, as hope faded, Sanghyun asked the question they all wondered. How do humans stay hopeful in situations like this? Taman lay against the cave wall, his breathing labored from broken ribs. He looked at the young diplomat and saw genuine desperation in his eyes. You want to know the truth? Taman's voice was rough with pain. Humans don't always stay hopeful. Sometimes we despair. Sometimes we want to give up. Silence fell. This was not the answer they expected. But here's the thing, Taman continued. My ancestors survived ice ages that should have killed them. They crossed oceans on wooden boats, not knowing if land existed on the other side. They walked through deserts with no water, through jungles with diseases that killed half their tribes. They climbed mountains that touched the sky just to see what was on the other side. He shifted position, wincing. Every single human alive today carries the genes of people who refused to die, who looked at impossible situations and said, "Not today." We have 10,000 generations of survivors in our blood. Quitting is not in our nature, but how? Bora asked. How do you find strength when everything seems lost? Taman smiled despite his pain. We tell ourselves stories. We remember that our great-great-great-grandparents faced worse and won. We think about the people waiting for us at home. We imagine the future we want to see. He looked around at each face, and we trust our tribe. Because humans learned a long time ago that together, we can survive anything. Huan's mandibles clicked softly. Your species is remarkable. No, Taman said. We're just stubborn. Stubbornness is our greatest survival trait. We're too dumb to know when we're beaten, so we keep fighting anyway. Dowan laughed, a crystalline chiming sound. I think I understand now. Humans do not survive because they are strong. They survive because they refuse to accept defeat. Exactly. Taman closed his eyes, exhausted. Now let's rest. The storm will end. Rescue will come. And we will survive this because that's what we do. We survive. His words carried a certainty that infected the others. If this human who had saved them repeatedly believed they would survive, then it must be true. As if in response to their renewed hope, the storm began to weaken. The wind died down. The rain became a drizzle. By dawn, the clouds broke apart to reveal clear sky. They emerged from the caves like creatures awakening from hibernation, battered, exhausted, hungry, but alive. Every single one of them was alive. Taman stood at the cave entrance, his body broken but his spirit undefeated, and watched the sunrise paint the sky in colors that reminded him of Earth. See? He said to the crew gathered behind him. We made it, just like I said we would. After the storm passed, Taman led the crew back to work despite his injuries. His ribs screamed with every movement, but he refused to stop. There was too much to do. They needed food, clean water, and to make sure the distress beacon still functioned after 3 days of punishment. Dowan examined the beacon carefully. It survived. The signal is still broadcasting. His crystalline face reflected relief. Rescue should detect us soon. How soon is soon? Minji asked. Her amphibious skin looked healthier now that rain had replenished their water supply. Could be hours. Could be days. Could be weeks. Taman limped to the cave entrance and surveyed the ridge. We prepare as if it will be weeks, but stay ready for immediate departure. The next days fell into a routine that surprised everyone with its efficiency. Taman taught them to hunt small game using traps made from salvaged materials. Sangyun became skilled at setting snares, following Taman's instructions with careful precision. They caught rabbit-like creatures that provided protein to supplement their dwindling rations. Taman showed them how to fish in the streams using improvised spears. Bora, despite her broken arm, became their best fisher. Her reptilian reflexes and patience made her a natural. She could stand motionless for hours, then strike with lightning speed when prey appeared. Yuan documented everything. Her compound eyes missed nothing as she recorded each technique, each lesson, each moment of human ingenuity. She began to understand that what she was witnessing was not just survival, but a masterclass in human adaptation. Minji discovered that many local plants had medicinal properties. Working with Taman's knowledge of earth botany, she created treatments for injuries and illnesses. The combination of alien medical science and human herbal knowledge proved remarkably effective. Dowan spent his time improving their camp. He built better tools using salvaged metal and stone. He created a water collection system that captured rain and filtered it through layers of sand and charcoal. His engineering mind, combined with human primitive technology, produced results that exceeded both approaches individually. By the end of the first week, they were not just surviving. They were thriving. The crew gathered around the evening fire, no longer afraid of the dark. They had learned to read the jungle's language. They knew which sounds meant danger and which meant opportunity. They understood the rhythm of this alien world. Tell us about Earth, Sang-hyun said one night. Your home planet. What is it like? Taman stared into the flames, remembering. Earth is beautiful. It has oceans deeper than mountains are tall, deserts that stretch forever, forests so thick you cannot see the sky, mountains that pierce the clouds. It sounds peaceful, Bora said. Taman laughed, then winced at the pain in his ribs. Peaceful? Earth tried to kill humans every single day of our existence. Earthquakes that swallowed cities, volcanoes that blocked out the sun, storms that could level forests, winters that froze entire continents. Then why do humans love it so much? Darwin asked. Because it made us who we are. Taman added wood to the fire. Earth was harsh, but it was fair. It gave us challenges, and if we were smart enough, brave enough, stubborn enough, we survived. And every generation that survived made the next generation stronger. My people evolved on a peaceful world, Haiwan said quietly. Stable climate, abundant resources, no major predators. We developed civilization through cooperation and thought. And that's valuable, Taman acknowledged. But humans developed differently. We learned to make fire because we needed it to survive cold nights. We learned to hunt because we would starve otherwise. We learned to fight because everything else wanted to eat us. He looked around at each face. You all come from worlds that welcomed your species. Earth fought humanity every step of the way, and somehow, impossibly, we won. On the 10th day, Sangyun spotted something in the sky, a bright point of light moving against the stars. It grew larger, resolved into a ship. The rescue vessel descended through the atmosphere with graceful precision. They had been found. The crew celebrated with tears and laughter. 2 weeks of survival, of constant challenge, of learning to live in a hostile environment. And they had done it. Every single person was alive. The rescue ship landed on the ridge, its sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight. The hatch opened, and a team of rescuers emerged wearing full environmental suits. We cannot believe you survived, the rescue team leader said through his helmet. We assumed you were all dead. This planet is classified as Class 9. Class 9, Haiwan asked. What does that mean? Death world, the leader said simply. Unsurvivable by galactic standards. We only came because the distress beacon was still transmitting. We expected to recover bodies, not living crew members. Silence fell. The survivors looked at each other, then at Taman. Death world? Sangyun repeated slowly. But we lived here for 2 weeks. Impossible, another rescuer said. Class 9 planets have lethal conditions. Aggressive predators, violent weather, toxic plants. No species can survive without extensive technology and support. Taman started laughing. It hurt his ribs, but he could not stop. The absurdity of it all was too much. What is funny? The rescue team leader asked. Where I come from, Taman said between laughs. This is just camping. A nice vacation spot. Hell, back on Earth, people pay money to do this for fun. The rescuers stared at him like he was insane. Wait, Darwin said, crystalline voice sharp with realization. Are you saying Earth is also a death world? Earth? The rescue team leader checked his datapad. Earth is classified as Class 10, the highest danger rating we have. Only a handful of planets in the galaxy match its hostility. The crew turned to look at Taman with newfound understanding. Everything he had done, every skill he had demonstrated, every impossible feat they had witnessed, suddenly made perfect sense. You are from Class 10, Haiwan whispered. The most dangerous classification. And you survived it, Bora added. Your whole species survived it. Not just survived, Taman corrected, his smirk returning. We conquered it. We built cities that touched the sky. We crossed oceans in boats made of wood. We climbed the highest mountains just to plant flags on top. We went to war with our own planet and won. And then you got bored, Minji said, understanding dawning. Humans got bored with surviving the deadliest planet in the galaxy. So they started looking for new challenges. Exactly. Taman accepted a medical scanner from one of the rescuers. We dive in oceans filled with predators. We jump from aircraft thousands of meters in the air. We explore caves deep underground. We race vehicles at deadly speeds. We do all this for entertainment. The rescue team stood frozen, unable to process this information. So when you ask how we survived here, Taman continued, the answer is simple. We are humans, we come from hell, and everywhere else is just slightly less hellish. The journey back to civilization took 3 days. During that time, news of their survival spread through the galactic network. 7 crew members survived 2 weeks on a Class 9 death world, led by a human security officer with nothing but primitive, knowledge and determination. The galactic media could not get enough of the story. Interviews requested daily. Scientists wanting to study human survival capabilities. Military organizations interested in human training methods. But the most significant attention came from the Galactic Council itself. 6 months after their rescue, Taman stood before the council in a massive chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Beside him stood his crew, healthy and recovered from their ordeal. Taman of Earth, the council speaker began. Your actions on that planet have forced us to re-evaluate our understanding of humanity. We believed humans were simply another spacefaring species. We did not understand that you came from such an extreme environment. Most humans do not think about it, Taman admitted. Earth is just home to us. We do not realize how unusual our planet is until we travel to other worlds. Your survival skills saved not only yourself but 6 alien crew members, who had no training for such conditions, the speaker continued. This has led to a proposal. Hywen stepped forward. I submitted a formal recommendation to the Council. All galactic vessels should carry human survival specialists. All diplomatic missions should include human security officers. And all species should have access to human survival training. The Council has approved this recommendation, the speaker announced. Furthermore, we authorize the creation of the first Galactic Survival Training Academy. Taman of Earth, you will serve as its director. Taman looked at his crew. Sangyan beamed with pride. Dawan's crystalline body shimmered with approval. Minji, Bora, and the others all nodded encouragement. I accept, Taman said. The academy was built on a neutral world, designed to teach survival skills to any species willing to learn. Students came from across the galaxy, diplomats, soldiers, explorers, scientists, all wanting to learn from the species that conquered a death world. Taman's teaching staff included humans from every background, military veterans, wilderness guides, search and rescue experts. Each brought their own Earth-honed expertise, but Taman also recruited his crew. Sang-hyun became an instructor, teaching students that survival was as much mental as physical. Dawan,